We are delighted to announce that the Neurodivergent Experience has partnered with RTN Mental Health Solutions. With up to a 5-year waiting list for autism and ADHD assessments via the NHS, and that's even if you get a referral from your GP, getting an assessment in the UK has never been harder. So if you're like me and can't wait anymore, going private may be the best option for you. RTN offers online assessments for kids aged 6 right up to adults, with prices starting at £900. To make it more accessible, RTN can offer payment plans up to 5 months. You can access their remote services from the comfort of your home anywhere in the UK, and RTN offers group and one-to-one counselling, a private route to access ADHD medication following the assessment, and will even fight for you if your GP doesn't accept the results. So if you live in the UK and can't wait to get an assessment, go to www.rtnmentalhealthsolutions.com and use the discount code RTN23, making it even more affordable for all of our listeners to get an autism and ADHD assessment.
Hello, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Experience. I'm Jordan James, also known as the Autistic Photographer, and I'm joined by my co-host and very good friend, Simon Scott.
For this episode of the Neurodivergent Experience, I'm not very well, so we will be joined by Sophie James, Jordan's daughter, and this topic we will be talking about growing up in an undiagnosed family.
Hello, Sophie.
Hello.
I know you're in the same house as me because I can just about hear you, so that's always fun. Thank you for stepping in today. We really appreciate it. Had a bit of a fun message this morning when we were supposed to do the episode that my poor co-host and brother Simon, you're not well, are you?
No, I've got a very stuffy nose and radioactive snot, and it's one of those colds where I've not known that I was going to have a cold and woke up at 3 this morning like I'd been punched in the schnoz.
But so, you are a soldier.
I'm trying to be, yeah. But as you can hear in my voice, it's not amazing, and if I'm coughing and spluttering, sorry in advance. But yes, I'm actually really excited to hear this episode today because, one, I can take a step back and just sit and listen as a listener, which is always nice. But the topic that we're going to be discussing, growing up in an undiagnosed family, obviously is something that I'm still in because I'm the only diagnosed member of my family. So I'm really looking forward to hearing you and Sophie talk about your time together growing up being undiagnosed. It's going to be a really interesting conversation. So I shall hand over to you, Sophie, because I'm struggling, as you can hear. But I'm interested to know, growing up undiagnosed in an undiagnosed family, what sort of environment would you say you found yourself in?
Well, I found that when I would go to other people's houses, always felt like my family was really weird and really strange, and we were always very different. And I really started feeling like I was different when I got to secondary school. But in primary school, I think because I was in a class of 27 people that I've been around since I was 5 and to year 6, you just get used to those people. They know you understand them, and I didn't really struggle in primary school at all. And obviously being a girl, I masked a lot of the time and just watched how everyone else acted and the things that they were interested in, and I just copied them, and I didn't even realize that I was doing that. But when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, there would always be a new song that everyone was singing. I'd go home and try and find it and learn all the lyrics of it, so I could fit in with everyone else. But yeah, I didn't really struggle in primary school, but I always felt like my family was very different, how we did things and how we were around each other. And especially my mum is very different to a lot of the mums growing up, being that I mean, the one thing that was very different about my parents is that they weren't always involved in what I was doing all the time in school, and they weren't like always kind of helicopter parenting, looking at like what if I have any homework or what I need to bring to school. And I was very independent in primary school compared to like other families where their mums would do everything for them, and I'd always get told off because I wouldn't have brought my book bag to school because I didn't know it was that day, or I ended up not going to school like in home clothes because they didn't check their emails to know that it was home clothes day.
What is a book bag?
Book bags where we put our books in, and we were supposed to take it in on a certain day, and I never knew what was going on, and neither did you guys. So I always got told off.
I'm taking a vow of silence. I think I have no idea what she's talking about. She's just making stuff up. She goes along. I think she's really she's a runaway. She's a terrible child. She's a drug abuser, obviously. I did none of this. I was perfect.
It's when you think about it, they were so ADHD themselves. They literally had no idea what was going on in like my school life. Like they were like, "It's parents' evening tomorrow." I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "Do we need to go?" I'm like, yes, you do. Like,
I don't see why. I mean, you were doing really well, and we had notes that you had won competitions, or you were always like, oh yeah, Sophie's really brilliant. Sophie's really. To be fair, I actually really liked going to the parent teacher stuff. It's all Sylvia's mum. It's always Sylvia's mum. It's always Sylvia. It's all her fault, obviously. I was amazing. Not bumbling through it as a sort of 20-year-old at all. But yeah, no, I used to enjoy going to them with Sophie because they were always really positive. It was always really good.
But it's funny because you guys never knew what was like going on.
Oh no, yeah, no. We were happy to do it. That was that because that's the difference. We were happy to be involved. We just didn't know when to because we wouldn't get emails and things like that. And
you'd get them, you just never check them. Yeah. I'd go to like an after school. That
sounds like a neurotypical thing.
I'd go to an after school club and it would be cancelled for some reason. And every single time I go to the nurse's office, I'd go, "Can you please ring my dad?" They'd go, "Why? We sent an email. This happened last time." I go, "They do not check that. They don't know what's going on. You have to ring them and tell him to come and pick me up." And they'd be like, they just wouldn't care. But if anything, I find it quite good because a lot of parents would be like a lot of kids would almost not want to try as hard because they always had someone like battering at them, like, "You need to do this, and do you have your bookcase, and do you have your book bag, and do you have your book?" And like, I was completely left to it. So I had to like just learn to be like, "Oh, I need to bring my thing, or I need to do this, or I need to remember that it's home clothes day." So kind of
we're teaching you independence. It's called not mollycoddling.
I don't think you were doing it on purpose, but it worked.
No, it was all planned. No, it was all planned. It's. I mean, to be fair, everything I've ever done has been completely strategically planned, like a military operation. And you are at university, in one of the best universities in the country, studying marine biology, and Simon has an economics degree. So I think I personally did really well. Your mother, on the other hand, I think she was dropping the ball a lot.
Well, that's maybe another thing. Is
I had it all planned.
Mama wasn't friends with any of the other mums. Like, she didn't.
Mummy was never friends. Mummy. Mummy was never friends with anybody except Daddy. Daddy and Mummy were only friends with each other. No, see, the thing is, I did try. When Sophie was at primary school, I really did try. I tried in the playground. I tried to mingle with the other parents and do the parent, outside of school thing. And I organized birthday parties. I organized like sleepovers and get-togethers and things like that because I always wanted that stuff to happen to me. So essentially how I was parenting was the opposite to how I was parented. So my thing was to be as involved as possible in their lives. But when it came to education stuff, we used to drop the ball a lot. Like as far as emails and contact, and also I didn't like talking to the teachers because they would always talk to me like I was like 5 years old. I think that's just a primary school teacher thing, that they're like, hello, Mr. James, how are you? I'm fine, and I'm also an adult, so can you not talk to me like this? But I think it was really, really difficult for Sylvia and I in that playground, especially Sylvia, because Sylvia looks crazy young, like crazy young. And so she had Sophie when she was 25. Yeah, 25. So that's not like that's really too young to have a child. So she's 25, but she looks like a teenager. We both looked like teenagers. I mean, I had Sophie's brother, Simon. It was all me. Sylvie was there somewhere. When I was 19 and Sylvie was 23, which is very, very young. But we had Sophie 2 years later. So I was 21, Sylvia was 25, and essentially, but Sylvia looked so young. So, and all these parents would judge, and then Sylvia would feel really anxious, especially because she's from Poland, and a lot of people like really disliked Polish people when they came over, and you're taking our jobs, dude, taking our jobs. And so she felt really nervous about talking to people. I don't think they particularly liked her.
It felt like Mama. There were parents that I don't feel did judge on that level, but I feel Mama did just really struggle. I think it was just so obvious that she felt that she was out of place, and I could see that she would just struggle talking to any of the other mums. Like, they were all part of this like sort of mum club. They all knew each other. They were all involved with the school, and Mama was, most of them all stay-at-home mums, and Mama working, and then I think obviously being a bit younger, but also being neurodivergent herself, she just couldn't. I think she really genuinely struggled to talk to any of them and connect with anyone, and just always felt quite out of place.
Your mum's never been confident when it comes to speaking with people in general. And I think especially when she was a lot younger, again, being undiagnosed, none of us knew we were neurodivergent at all. And I think it was very, very complicated to try and navigate a neurotypical world as it is when you are diagnosed, but when you don't even know that you're different, but you just feel different all the time. And Sylvia has masked so much. It was like deep, like my mask was quite deep, but essentially I'm quite obviously ADHD as like the stereotype. Like Rain Man's a stereotype of autism, I'm a stereotype of ADHD. So but I already knew I was ADHD. So I actually knew I was hyperactive. I just didn't know that was neurodivergent. I actually just thought, again, that was just too much sugar. That's literally what I'd been told. So I tried to stay off the sugar, which isn't great. But yeah, for Sylvia, it was really complicated because like the parent playground is a very judgy place. It is, and everyone judges. Everyone's like, oh, and the thing is that even when people don't judge, because of Sylvia's low self-confidence, she would always feel like they did. And because she's blonde, because she's very pretty, because she looks so much younger than all the other parents, she was judging herself of what. So she was catastrophizing, which is a very common thing with neurodivergent people. We'll always think the worst thing.
I think that happened a lot because a lot of the parents that I would go round to their house and meet them, some of the mums were just so nice. They were just mums. Like, they love everyone, even the naughty.
Yeah, I got on with them fine.
They're just nice women who just love, a lot of them. But I think because Mama felt so out of place from the beginning, she judged herself and just felt like she couldn't. She just felt like she couldn't.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Just psychoanalyzing your mother. But.
Yeah. And that's what I mean. It's like from very early on, I felt like my family was very different, as well as the fact that most people were picked up by their mums, and I had daddy come and pick me up every day from school because mama was working, or I'd have to go to after school club. And that was very different to everyone else. Like, all their mums would organise their party, all the mums would know each other, and they would like take their kids into town after school. But I'd always have daddy come and pick me up. All the other parents, and especially the dads, like most dads, you didn't really see them. They would be like working, or they'd be like not very present. I think that's quite a usual dynamic in a lot of households, that the dad isn't very present and the mum's like doing most of the things with the kids. But that's just our dynamic. But you were just so different to the other dads, and I think because of your own neurodivergence, like the one thing that I've realized, like you and that I get from you, is you just always prioritize fun. No, you don't need to go into school today when we can go to Thorpe Park. Let's go to
but like
Blessington.
Thorpe Park was way more fun than going, because I remember my school experience, and for me, I was the thing that the number one thing I was terrified was you guys being bullied. That was my number, because I was so badly bullied to the point where it kept me up at night. You know, it traumatized me that I was so so anytime any kid would like, oh, what's, you'd come out, oh, the thing you did this to me, I'd go straight up to the parent. I'd go, what did your daughter do to my daughter?
Yeah, literally in year two,
I scared the hell out of a lot of people.
There was one girl in primary school that I was always having issues with. In year two, I remember I came out like after school, and you picked me up, and I said something happened with the girl again, and then you just took me to one of the other parents and you went, can you just look after Sophie for just a second? And he just went straight up to the girl's dad, and it was weird that the dad was picking her up because he never usually did, but he went straight up to him and he was just like, your daughter's picking on my daughter, you think that's acceptable? Like, what are you going to do about it? And then the dad was like, oh, well, that's the school's job. And you were just like, no, it's not. You were like, that's your job. And that's, it's just like, you never saw any of the other parents do that ever. Like, it would be, they would all rely through the school, but like, you just went straight up in front of everyone.
It's because I'm old school. Because I'm gangster, innit? No, seriously. I learned how to be a dad from telly. Like Sylvia says it all the time. I'm like a sitcom dad. That's how I learned how to be a dad. And like growing up watching sitcoms from like 60s, 70s, 80s, that's what the dad would do. I mean, I never went up to a kid. Like I've seen people go up to kids and start having to go at kids and stuff. I never did that. I never had to go to the kid because I was like, well, it's not the kid's fault. It's a child who is responsible for this child's behaviour. The parent is. As far as I was concerned, whatever my kids did, that was on me. Whatever they did, whether they were naughty, whether they were good, that was all on me. That was all on Sylvia. It's your parents' responsibility. I have lightened up before anyone tries to go, meh, meh, meh. I have lightened up a little bit. I understand that a lot of neurodivergent kids have a lot of issues, and a lot of these issues aren't down to parenting. A lot of these issues are down to environments, schooling, other kids picking on them. And I'm sure this girl who was doing she was doing, Sophie, I remember that there was definitely something going on there. And I do wonder that it was the fact that she was neurodivergent, and that she was having issues, but at the end of the day, I didn't really care about any of that in that moment.
No, because she was just being mean to me. It wasn't that she was being weird. She was just genuinely being mean to me.
Yeah, which is unacceptable.
But it was interesting because the first thing that he came back saying was it's the school's job and not his.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean about a lot of the dads just were not involved in their child's life. It was almost like, they're babysitting their child if they're looking after it. And it was very different for us because it would mostly be you picking us up from school and doing everything with us. It was very prominent from very early on that everyone knew that my family was very different and quite odd. Because we didn't do things in the same way as everyone else did. Mama wasn't involved in the other mums. Daddy was an interesting character. And so it was
interesting.
Well, and also we had very different rules in our house to other kids. Like one thing that was very different is I was always allowed sleepovers. So I'd always be inviting people around to come for sleepovers, and I'd always want to go to theirs for sleepovers. But none of the other parents allowed it.
I had that exact experience as well. My parents were the parents that always had kids around their house, and I very rarely went to other kids' houses. It was literally up until I was about 18 years old. A lot of what you're discussing actually is very reflective of my own experience, except that my dad used to work a lot. So it used to be my mum that used to have to deal with the school. And I remember so many times where she would come home and have issues, this mum with this or this with that. And I always remember seeing my mum struggle from an early age, trying to navigate the school playground. And I suppose that kind of did drip down to me because I was aware that we were slightly different. I'm interested to know, Jordan, did the school pick up on it at all? Were they saying to you, oh, Simon's struggling with this, Sophie's struggling with this, you need to do X, Y, and Z? Was that something that you had to deal with a lot?
As an advocate, I've talked to a lot of parents, and the one thing that is very, very common, especially with girls and their high masking abilities, is that the neurodivergence in less DM5, solid, obvious DM5, it's not usually picked up in primary school, because the thing about neurodivergence is it's normally picked up and it's normally thought of as when you struggle, when you get things wrong, it's a deficit. And it's so funny because I'm like, oh, that guy's neurodivergent, and then someone will go, oh, wait, yeah, but he's fine. He's never, he doesn't struggle at all. It's always about struggle with neurodivergence. It's never about the positives, the abilities and the good side of being neurodivergent. That's never ever seen. It's always seen as a deficit. So those deficits, they just weren't obvious for Sophie. Like social deficits definitely weren't there. She was incredibly social in primary school. She had lots of friends.
The only thing that was quite different is I was like just very, very, very hyper. I was often told that I just needed to like chill out.
A lot of them, when they met me, they were like, oh, that's why she's like that, because you're like that. So they just assumed that it was just learned behavior, or it was just like nature and nurture, that they didn't think, oh, that guy's neurodivergent and his daughter is. It's just a lot of schools, even now, they just don't pick up on it, especially with girls. One thing that they did pick up on was the fact that she might be dyslexic, but they just went, oh, she might be dyslexic. And they offered absolutely no help whatsoever. Absolutely no help whatsoever. They just went, you need to read with her more. And I'm like, I tell her, I used to put my kids to bed every night I could, and I'd tell them a bedtime story. We'd read together. We'd play games together. We'd use Stitch from Lilo and Stitch and Gromit. Yeah, it was called Detective Dog.
We'd have detectives dog stories.
Making up stories and getting them to join in and playing with my kids. We'd sit on the bottom bunk of my son's double bunk bed, and we would just play these stories and make them up as we go along. And for me, it was all about getting the kids to use their imaginations, use that wonder, and just be kids. Because there was so often throughout their school years, it was, it's all about, you have to act this age and you have to hit this target, and, you have to be like this at this age. Who made up this absolute horse crap? Who came up with this, that every kid has to hit this level? And if they don't, they are developmentally disabled. And I'm like, right, but my kids can do stuff that your kids can't. Does that make your kids developmentally disabled? Oh no, that's right. It doesn't happen like that, because your kids are hitting the targets that are expected. My kids are hitting different targets that aren't considered, in quotes, normal.
The one thing I find interesting is that your demand avoidance was quite prominent during primary school, because it was like, they said that I was struggling to read, so they'd be like, well, can you get her to read to you? But you
That's because you were rubbish at reading.
You didn't like us reading to you. And so you would always read to us, which was helpful in some way, but you wouldn't get us to read to you.
It's because I had a routine, and this is what I realise now, is that I had a routine and the school was telling me to break my routine, and I was like, no, it's your job to help her read. It's not my job to help her read. It's your job. I have a routine. We do Detective Dog Story, or we used to read a story.
The Faraway Tree.
Yeah, the Faraway Tree. And I would do all the fun voices from Moonface and all the other characters. And I love the Faraway Tree. And I would read to them. And when Sophie would read to me, I would just zone out. I couldn't do it. I would just zone out because there's nothing wrong with Sophie's reading voice is beautiful. And she's just like me. Simon's a lot more monotone in the typical sort of autistic way, but Sophie's she's got a great voice, as you can hear. She's very, very much like me. But because it wasn't the story that I wanted, I would just zone out. I literally couldn't do it. And it makes me feel, oh yeah, I'm a terrible parent because I can't do it. And I'm like, I literally just couldn't do it. My concentration levels, the ADHD, demand avoidance, all these things about being neurodivergent would just come into play, and I'd be like, no, I'm just going to read to you now, because that was my routine.
Yeah, it just felt like we did everything in a very different way. Like other kids would have to go home and then, do their homework, or they would go to this like tutoring thing, or it never felt like education was the priority. It was just like, you go and do it because you need to go and do it, but it was never the priority. But it, like, for me, that it just worked for me because it was like I always wanted to do well. I'd never wanted to let myself down, so I always did well. But it was very prominent. Like I would always be forgetting things that I wasn't supposed to forget, and and then I'd always be told. I always got told that I was exactly like Simon. The teachers that had Simon as well, because we would just forget things all the time and not remember them, or like not bring things in because we didn't know it was that day. But then it just meant that we had to learn a bit the harder way, or what was very different is like, especially towards the later years in primary school, like, I'd start making my own packed lunch, just being a lot more independent than a lot of the other kids.
See, that was planned. Essentially, I said, look, I've always thought I want my kids to have fun. I want to love my kids. I want to spend time with my kids. It's something that I didn't really get a lot of, especially from my dad. He didn't spend a lot of time with me. If I wanted to spend time with my dad, it had to be the things that he liked. And I genuinely didn't like those things. And it wasn't that much different with my kids. I wanted to do the things with them that I also enjoyed. I really wanted to be that dad that would sit with his daughter. And, I know this is like a gender stereotype, but, this is how I was brought up, of sitting around having a tea party. So, a bit like that scene in Toy Story where the girl, Mrs. Nesbit. So I literally had like Buzz Lightyear and the tea set and like cuddly toys that, let's be fair, Sophie and I have more cuddly toys than I think collectively most adults have in their entire lives. And I would sit with her and I'd very, very quickly go, this is not doing this for me. And I would push myself through it because I wanted to be a good dad, but I didn't enjoy it. And I thought that was awful. I was like, oh, what is wrong with me? I can't enjoy time with my daughter. But then, we would do other things that we would love to go to. I love doing family days, but I think the thing that I would do that I'd never ever heard of before, and I never saw this before, I would do daddy-daughter days or daddy-sunny days. So it'd be me and Sophie would go off and we'd have a day out, just the two of us, and I would do the same with Simon. And I think that level of bonding was so important, especially when you have multiple kids, because that kid gets to feel like the only kid, like the most important kid, the most important person in the world. It's just not like that. It wasn't like that for me. I never really got time to spend on my own with my parents. Not that I wanted to anyway, but I didn't want to do it like my parents, because my parents are both undiagnosed as well. I mean, my dad's passed away now, but he was undiagnosed, and I think that a lot of his problems, a lot of the problems he and I had, were because we were both neurodivergent, and we were just like too similar. We were too similar, and we would just clash. Whereas Sophie and I being too similar, yes, we have clashed, but because I'd make the effort to be part of her life, we just got on so well. Plus, she does those eyes, and then I just buy her things.
The one thing about you, Mama, is like you were very, especially you were very understanding when it came to my struggles in school. Like, even in primary school, there'd be so many days I just really didn't want to go in. I always wanted, I mean, every kid just doesn't want to be in. But I feel like a lot of mine went a bit deeper to just like, and especially when it came into secondary school, it got really bad. But towards the end of primary school, you know, I'd have days where I was just like so overwhelmed and just struggling. And you would always give a lot of understanding to that, just like, yeah, okay, let's just take the day off. And, you know, we'd always get a letter saying that my attendance was terrible, but I was still doing well in school. I was always doing well in it. But I feel like because I had that, and we had that mutual understanding of like, this is a difficult thing, being in school all the time where it's so loud and busy and noisy, and you're feeling looked at and judged all the time. It's just like, it's just so much. And I just felt like you were very understanding towards that. Whereas again, most parents were just like, no, everybody needs to go to school, grades. Where I was just, you know, I had to make sure that if there was something that needed to be signed, I needed it to be printed out so I could take it home for you guys to sign, because I just knew that you wouldn't do it. So it was just like, a lot of it was like, okay, I need to go home and parent my parents, and how to be parents right now.
It is quite funny how quickly my kids became older than me, like mentally. I think because I had so much trauma, like obviously we've all got that synaptic baby sort of pathways, infant pathways, but I think that trauma also affects you know, how you are as an adult. Obviously, you know, I was very up and down. I was either like quite strict, like, okay, this, you can't do this or you can't do that. So, you know, there'd be things that I'd be really strict on. But I definitely think when it came to like school, because I remember the awful things that happened to me at school, I was terrified of sending my kids to school. Terrified. So anytime Sophie was like, oh, I'm having a difficult time, I was like, well, I'll just come out. I'll just take that to school. The year that she not only passed her GCSEs, she did so well on them. She was in the paper for being one of the most improved students in the whole of the school when Sophie did her GCSEs. Basically, the school at this point, I'd said, you know, because I was diagnosed, and I'd said, look, you know, Sophie is we're trying to get Sophie diagnosed, but the NHS are just taking 1 billion years, and it's really difficult with girls as well. So I said, you know, I just want you to treat her as if she was neurodivergent. I want you to treat her as if she was autistic. And they went, okay, no problem. So anytime that I would take Sophie out of school, you know, and I'd get a letter, they would actually tell me the letters go out automatically, but don't worry about it. We're dealing with it.
This was all from year 8.
Yeah, they were pretty good. They weren't great with her, but they were good at that stuff. But they didn't understand autism at all.
A really good reason of why at least I had an okay experience with that is because my head of year was actually my geography teacher. And I remember she had me for like the whole of year 7. And in year 7, I struggled so much.
The difference was huge.
It's funny because I remember in year 6, there would be certain kids in my class who were now looking at obviously neurodivergent, but it was never said that they were, but they were just like had differences or they needed extra help. And there, I remember they would go to the secondary school that they've chosen early on with a supportive teacher to go and show them their new surrounding, it's going to be like, what's going to happen. And obviously, you know, we didn't know anything about me and probably a lot of other kids. And I just remember being thrown into year 7 and being like, what is this? So many more new. But I came from a very, very small primary school. A lot of other primary schools have lots of classes in a year. My primary school had one. There was 27 people in my year each year, you know, and it was the same people. And then all of a sudden, year 7, there's tons of different classes, tons of different people, loads of older kids as well, you know, and then loads of different buildings. Suddenly you're not in the same room with the same teacher anymore. You have loads of teachers and loads of classes, and you're supposed to just do it and just get on with it. And I went from being this kid that you literally had to like pull us out to be like, okay, we need to calm you down. We need to chill you out a little bit, because I was so excited and I was so happily and bubbly all the time, and I loved having friends, and you know, and I was so extrovert into being the most introverted person that you can imagine. Just a complete shell of myself all the time. In primary school, I would always put my hand up. I'd always say what I was thinking. I'd always say my opinion. I was very opinionated and like always wanted my voice to be heard. And then as soon as I was in year 7, I didn't even want to be heard, like coughing. I remember we were being asked to say yes when our name was called out in the register. And I'd be so nervous just to say yes that as we were doing it and my name was coming, I'd have this weird thing where I keep swallowing and I couldn't stop swallowing, and my mouth would be...
That's so funny.
My mouth would be so dry because I just couldn't... I'm like, oh, I'm going to say it and I'm going to slip up and I'm going to choke, and I'd be like, I just swallowed it. My mouth was so dry. And then when I did say it, I was like, yes. And I would literally just sit there in embarrassment and just go completely into myself. And I found that I couldn't relate to these other kids. I was really struggling to do it. I felt so small and so just like ashamed as well. I just felt ugly, and I just felt like no one likes me and I can't get on with any of these people. And especially because I came from such a small primary school, I really lots of other kids all knew each other because they came from the same one. Most of the people who went to my primary school went to other secondary schools in the town I'm in. And so I really didn't know anyone. And so there would already be these relationships built, and it was like I was starting completely from scratch. And I was so nervous and scared, and especially when you're that age, you find everything that you do embarrassing. So it was just so scary all the time, and I hated being there, and I really, really struggled to make friends. And it wasn't because I couldn't do it. I remember beginning to be friends with quite a lot of popular people. I just couldn't get on with them. I didn't like how they were acting. I didn't like the fakeness. I felt like I had to completely mask that I couldn't be myself. And I just, the pressure, I couldn't take it. And I even remember in an English class, like I don't know what I was trying to do, but I remember the teacher was going around saying, you know, what is something that you hate? And I remember saying that I hated stupid people. I was like, I hate stupid people.
That might be my fault.
And the worst thing is she turns around and she goes, it's pronounced stupid, not stupid. And I was also like, it was literally the most embarrassing thing ever.
She sounds stupid.
But it's also like, does that not depend on your accent? I'm still angry about that. Like, why can't you say stupid? Some people say stew. Some people say stew. Like, it depends on your accent. It depends how you say things.
No, it's because I, you know, from London and I have sort of a London/Surrey accent, so just certain words will come out like they're like South London, and stupid is one. So I don't say stupid. I mean, I do say stupid, but I also say stupid. So it's, and I probably shouldn't be saying either of them a lot around my kids. That was the other thing, is that a lot of times I'd forget that they're kids, because so often they'd be so grown up and I was the kid, and I'd be wearing like Minion t-shirts and like walking around like with a Minion cuddly toy in town, which Sophie loved and Simon hated. Sophie just thought, my dad's the best. He's like, he's obsessed with Minions. Everything yellow, I'd be like, something's yellow. Is that a Minion? Is that a Minion? No, it's a banana.
Yeah, and you had such weird obsessions that other families just did not have to deal with. Like
No,
every day,
didn't.
there was a point. There was a point in I don't remember what year it was, but you were just so obsessed with golf. And honestly, like when I look at a golf, anything, I get scared. I'm like,
I loved
because
golf.
literally every day after primary school, you would have to take me to a golf course where I just have to walk around because you were just so obsessed with golf. Like,
well, I
golf,
think
everything all the time.
I mean, I have discussed this on a previous episode about video gaming, where it was like my family just became like an inconvenience that got in my way from video gaming, from online gaming, which obviously a very big problem with hyperfocus, is the fact that you're so hyper, it's a superpower, blah, 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 not superpower. It's a really good ability to be able to concentrate on one thing because you can learn anything about it, but it doesn't really work that well when you have major priorities in your life, such as children who are your responsibility, and and a job, and my wife and my family. But then I'd get so fixated on certain things, and it was fine when my kids did it because they're kids; they don't have responsibilities as much as the parent does. But when I would do it, it would affect the whole family, like the whole family. And golfing was definitely one of them. I would want to be with, and this is the thing, I was obsessed with spending time with my kids. That was my number one obsession, was spending time with my kids. But unfortunately, because I also had my other hyperfixations, such as golf, which I would do probably 3 to 4 times a week whenever I got a chance, because I was working shift patterns at my work. I still do. It's a shift pattern thing. So when I'm off, I was off for like 6 days I can be off for. I had like 4 on, 4 off. So my 4 off, golf. On my 6 off, golf. It was just golf, 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 golf. And I wanted to do golf, but I also wanted to spend time with my kids. So I was like, well, golf is amazing. Golf is so much fun. And weirdly, Sophie was really good at golf. So I got them both like little, junior golf kits, golf sets, and we would just go golfing. I go golfing occasionally with Simon still now. He's good. He's very good. But I think I did that autistic thing where I just took it to another level. It definitely had a negative impact. Let's move on to what it was like to have an autistic dad, an undiagnosed autistic dad at home. Because the school thing is, and I'd really like to do more on that. Because your insight is incredible, Sophie. I knew how good you are at speaking, but you are exceeding my very high expectations of you. So you're doing so well, baby girl. And you got me a little bit choked up, and I know all this. But at home, I was very mentally ill. I had on and off depression. I had violent outbursts that would never be physical towards anyone. It would be physical towards myself. It would be, like punching a wall or punching myself or scratching myself. And I would always try and keep it away from the kids. So every time I had a meltdown, and of course I didn't really understand what that was back then. I was just had a lot of issues. So I didn't really know what a meltdown was. So I'd always push myself beyond any boundaries that now I know. But I mean, I had a little meltdown almost before we started doing this because, again, this whole setup, I got a new mic and I'd had it all set up on my tablet, and then the tablet is not compatible with the podcast app that we use. And then so I had to get my laptop out, and then the microphone fell over, and then that went across the room, and now it's back again. I don't know how it got back. It was a miracle. But essentially, yeah. But like now I find it difficult still, but back then it was a lot. And I'd always just sort of go as well. And, how did that affect you? And when did you start realizing that I was having a lot of problems, Sophie?
I think I realised that you had a lot of problems always. Like, especially that's what I mean when I go to other people's houses. I just realised like the things that they didn't have to deal with, or they just had no idea that was like even a feeling or a thing. And it's just more, it was always that we were all walking on eggshells all the time. And we all loved you very, very deeply. And you've always been great and a great dad. And, in comparison to a lot of other families that I've seen where their dad wasn't very present, I always felt so lucky. I really appreciated that I got a very present and loving dad who always wanted to do things and have fun. But then it was always, I found, and I still find now, that whenever you walk into a room, I have to analyze what mood you're in. I have to sit there and be like, is what I'm going to do right now going to annoy you more? Is if I drop something, will that trigger something else? It's just like always thinking. You have to think ahead, and you're kind of sitting there nervous, and it's like if you're in a really good mood then you're like, okay, that's good, okay, I don't want to ruin that. But then it's like if you're already in a bad one because you're tired or you're stressed about something, everyone could feel that. That wasn't just in your life, that was in everyone's life. Everyone could feel that. Everyone could feel if you were just a bit annoyed about something, stressed about something. And I just remember finding out that when we found out that you were autistic, my whole perception of you completely changed. And as well, you also completely changed, but my perception of you completely changed from being like, oh, Daddy actually just has problems. Daddy actually just has issues. This isn't a character thing. This isn't something he chooses. Because before, when we couldn't understand, and you'd get so angry over things that just no one else would, and you would just switch so quickly, just like that, just from being really happy to being like, it's like when I finally understood that there was a reason because of that, and that wasn't you just being like that because you just wanted to be like that and make everyone's life really difficult and make everyone just anxious all the time. My whole image of you completely changed, and I just loved you a million times more. And you completely changed as a person because you finally, and that's also why it felt like there wasn't anything bad about you and you weren't choosing to be bad, because as soon as you understood yourself, you changed. You went to being really nice and understanding your triggers and expressing yourself and doing things that everyone will, and you just completely, and I literally just I can't explain it to anyone else, but I'm like, if you knew what he was like before he understood he was autistic and afterwards, it's just a completely different person. And it made me so sad that in all those years you couldn't understand yourself, and when you did, you could be the best version of yourself, and you could get away from all those demons because you could actually understand them, and it was almost like you could make sense of your life and why everything happened and why everything fell into the way it did, and it finally felt like you can make sense of it all. And because you can make sense of it all, it opened up this new path for you of, okay, well, I know how to fix these things, or I know how to get through these things now because I understand myself, and I understand why I'm doing this, and I understand why I'm getting obsessed with things, and I understand why I'm getting so easy annoyed and angry. And you were just like, I get it now. And so then it opened up this new path of, what are we going to do? How are we going to move forward? Because I think if you can finally understand yourself, you can understand how to approach some of the difficulties you're having. But if you don't even know why you're having those difficulties, or you're even acting the way you do, well, you're just stuck in this like limbo of like, well, I want to be better. I want things to get better, but I've got all these demons that I don't even understand about myself. And I just feel like you were just stuck all the time. And I remember after all of your meltdowns, I remember the guilt you would feel.
It was the most, I mean, I generally feel like I'm not a good person anyway. I'm definitely working on that, and I'm having therapy, and it's been really, really good, because I think a lot of the problems that I had was that I hated myself. I genuinely hated myself, and I had this thing that I only existed, and I genuinely thought this, I only existed to be a dad to you.
It also felt like you hated everyone else.
No, to be fair, I still do.
I learned from a very, very young age of what bullying is, and mistreating other people, and what is bad and what is good from a very, very young age. You know, you told me about your bullying and what happened, and I understood the concept of it all very, very young, of mistreating other people because they're a bit different. Like, I always knew you were different. No other dads kept wearing minion things and were obsessed with minions. It's like, yeah, you're obviously a bit more special. And
What?
but it felt like you were just, you know, I learned how mistreated you were, and it rubbed off on me and Simon how much we hated everyone else as well. I feel like we were you and Mama were very hating of everyone. You didn't like, very judgmental. You were, because you felt judged by everyone and everything in your lives, you were very judgmental of everyone else and how everyone else did things and saw things. You really felt like you didn't like anyone.
It was really difficult in general, because we see the world so differently, and your mum and I, the thing that has bonded us so deeply for so long, and I think people, my favorite description of Sylvia and I at the moment is where people say it feels like you're a honeymoon couple. We've been together for 24 years, married for 23, together for 24 years, and it literally feels like we're on our honeymoon. And that is not something we portray. I mean, you know, Sophie, me and Mummy are crazy about each other, crazy, and because we could see things our way. It turns out we're both neurodivergent, which was why. But we had this way of looking at things And we just couldn't understand why no one else could see what we could see. And we'd be like, it's so annoying. People would really annoy us. They'd get under our skin. And of course, we would be verbal with that, and we'd talk about that. And a lot of times we weren't aware of what we were saying and how young you were and how you would pick it up. It just wasn't really something that came into my head, because the one thing about me as a neurodivergent person that I think is very, very negative and has affected me hugely throughout my life is that I have an outer inner voice. So when people would think things in their head, I would just say them, and I didn't realize that I said them. And it got me into a lot of trouble as a kid, and this is all my life. This is how it has been. And I know that it upset you, Sophie. I know it's upset a lot of people, where I can't think something without saying it. This is why I have to walk away a lot. And this is why I end up hating myself a lot, because I'll do things that people will be like, well, why did you do that? And I go, because I don't know why I did that.
Most people would go to a restaurant with their family and they'd look at the prices and they'd go, flip, that's really expensive. And then the food might come and they'd go, wow, that's a small portion. But most people would say that in their head and they'd pretend to enjoy the meal and love it and pay for it, and that's it. But we'd go for a meal, you'd see that it was more expensive than it was worth, and you'd look at the waitress or the waiter and you go, why is that expensive? But that's just ridiculous. And then everyone would be like, and then you would go to pay for it and you'd be like, why did you it shouldn't, that food was too small. I want a bigger portion of chips. You're saying that I need to pay for this portion of small, you're saying I need to pay this much for this small portion of the chips. And the waitress would be like, would you like me to get some more? And you'd be like, well, yeah.
Yeah,
and it's just like everything that most people would say in their head. It's not like what you would think it was wrong, but most people would say it in their head and just think it to themselves and go, whatever. Is you just have no filter and you just say it. And everyone's just like, oh, because it's just so like, oh. But I'm like that now, and I make everyone else feel that way now. So I'm just like, well.
And I think you're the best because of it. I think everyone should be like that. We should just say what we think.
The amount of meals that I get for free because I'm just like, that wasn't very good.
See, good parenting. There you go. I'm the best.
I eat like the whole meal and I'd be like, yeah, well, actually, that was really bad. But it's that you just didn't have any sort of filter towards teachers, towards other parents, towards anyone important. There was no level of like sort of respect. It's just like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of you, and if I disagree, I disagree with it.
As much as I want to avoid it, because I was sitting here really struggling a lot hearing what you were saying, Sophie, because I agree with everything you said. Like I'm not one of those people that's going to sit here trying to defend my actions, because I know exactly what I did, and I haven't got cognitive dissonance. I'm very self-aware of the things that I did, but I know why I did them, and I never meant to do them. And I hate it more than anything, because a lot of things that I would do would also be learnt behavior. So I'd learn that it's trauma is generational. Like trauma is generational, and it's sort of as we become more aware of it as a society, as things become more unacceptable, because there were things that were done to me that would be like, yeah, you're meant to smack your kids. That's fine. And I look at that and go, well, yeah, I used to get beaten. And back then it was like, yeah, you hit your kids. That's fine. But it's like, I never, ever, ever hit my kids. Never. In my head, I was like, oh, I'm doing really well as a parent because I haven't physically harmed my children. But as Sophie was saying, that I was causing other harm in ways that I definitely didn't mean to.
Well, what I find interesting is that when I think about our undiagnosed family, is that looking back, we all had something that we couldn't understand about each other that you'd look back now and go, oh, that's because we're all neurodivergent.
Definitely.
And, you know, for Simon, we wouldn't understand why he just couldn't listen to whatever anyone said, just complete demand avoidance all the time. Or with me, we couldn't understand why I had to keep sucking my thumb and I couldn't stop sucking my thumb. That was but looking back now, we obviously like knew that was a stim for me. But then when we understood that you were autistic, it almost gave this like extra layer of understanding of like, because we didn't really get why those things had to mean that you had to be so particular a lot of the time about things. And it wasn't anything to do with like school or anything like that, or what Simon and I needed to do, but it was more about, you know, how our manners and how we were at home and what we needed to be doing with you. And if things didn't go the way that you planned, it was just like meltdown.
Oh God, that for me was my worst meltdowns. Was when plans changed. Like, and it's a very stereotypical thing for autistic people is the unexpectedness of a change of plans, and especially because I always felt there was so much pressure on me as the dad, because your mum organised like dentist appointment, doctor's appointments. And she was like the sensible parent. She would organise the sensible things. If it was up to me, your teeth would have all fallen out. I don't like it because they didn't interest me. Dentist appointments didn't interest me. Doctor's appointment didn't interest me. These things didn't interest me.
But even then, Mama still struggled to keep on top of those things. Like looking back at it, you know, she struggled to keep on top of it all.
Yeah. There was a lot of pressure because she was doing it all. She was doing all that by herself. But then I had the exact same pressure the opposite way, because it was down to me to organise days out. It was down to me to organise every single holiday, the flights, the booking, everything. I mean, you've heard this stereotype of like autistic people and their itineraries of like, today we're going to do this and at this time we're going to do that. That was me. That was how I was like. And it took me a long time, and only after my diagnosis, to realize, no, I need to be way more flexible, because if everything doesn't go exactly as it's supposed to, that will end up, you know, having a trigger. And then at the end of it, there is a meltdown.
Simon and I understood very early on that you are a sensitive being. You know, Mama, even if you upset Mama, she'd take it on the chin, but everyone could feel what you feel. Like if it was happy, if it was sad, if it was, everyone can feel it. And it's like, even to this day, and people come over and they try and take a cup out of the cupboard, and they grab one of if they grab one of your cups, it's not like the thing is, it's not even like you told us to not touch your mum. No, it's not like you ever went, don't do that, or don't let anyone. It's not like that. But it's this knowledge of, if someone touches Daddy's cup and they break it, it's just like, you have to think ahead. You're just like, you know, don't even touch. Just don't even touch. Don't even move it out. Don't even look at it. Don't even look at it, because because although you'll get over it and it'll be fine, it's just like you'll get so upset and you'll have such an attachment to it, and it will upset you and hurt you, and everyone will feel it.
Yeah, I know a mug that I'm very attached to, and I don't even use it because it's actually too small. But what is that mug, Sophie?
It's the Shaun the Sheep one. But I don't even want anyone to touch any of your pint glasses. Like, people will come in and like grab a pint glass. I'm like, don't even stop. I find it interesting when we always talk about neurodivergent kids and parents, and when you're looking at it from the parent's perspective, looking at their kid, and you're thinking, right, I don't want to touch my autistic son's favorite glass, because if it drops, they'll be in tears and they'll be upset. Like, it will affect them the whole day. You don't want to change their plans because it's going to affect them the whole day. They're going to get upset. They're going to have a meltdown. And it's that application just two children that I think a lot of people don't understand is that application is still applied and has been applied to my own dad. Of, right, you don't want to do that because that's going to affect him. And you don't want to do that because that's going to upset him. And then, you're always, you're taking, although that's your parent and they take care of you and they do everything for you, it's also a mutual looking after.
Yeah, I'm still an autistic child.
Yeah, it's looking after you as well. Which is something we don't have with Mama. Like, I remember breaking one of Mama's favourite hair clips and I felt so bad about it and she was sad, but it wouldn't feel the same as doing it for something about you, because that would, Mama can just let it go and she'll move on with it, or she'll internalise it all. And that's the difference between you, Mama, is Mama will internalise everything and you will externalise everything. Everyone will know what you're thinking.
Yeah, I think she has the same attachments. Yeah, she has the same attachments to things as I do. Not as much. I mean, she has more attachments to humans, and I have more attachment to objects. I'm far more attached to objects than I am humans. But we both have this attachment to our kids and to our dogs.
It's also a perfect example of stereotypical male autistic people and stereotypical female autistic people. Mama masking, being quiet, internalizing a lot, acting like everything's okay, but actually struggling to balance it all and do it, but it's all very internalized, and on the surface you think that she's just a usual neurotypical woman. But on the other hand, you've got, if you look at it at like a child level, you've got this young boy who's just like out there in the middle of the classroom disrupting everything. Something hasn't gone his way, everyone's gonna see it. He's gonna throw something, he's gonna get angry, he's gonna get upset, and it's like you two are this almost like perfect contrasting representations of female and male neurodivergency, which was so easy, which is why it made so much sense when you said you were autistic, but no one ever thought Mama was until a couple years ago, whereas we look back and we're like, actually, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But you'd never see it because one is way more obvious than the other, but you still both had your struggles.
That brings me to a really good point, actually, because it is something that I really wanted to ask you. Because I think when after I got diagnosed, I was like, oh, I'm the autistic one. So and in that very childlike way, I was like, oh, everyone give me attention. It's all the attention. Like I didn't have enough attention being the dad of the household and everything being about me. It became like, oh, I'm the autistic one, and you lot are neurotypicals. And in a weird way, I kind of almost liked being the odd one out, because it was, there's something special about me. Special. So very special. I had my own bus and everything. And it was yellow.
Sunshine bus.
And yeah, sunshine. And then you turned around and went, Daddy, I actually also think I'm autistic. And my immediate reaction was, no, that's my thing. And it was terrible. It was terrible because that is how much of a child I can be. Of like, I would be like, no, I'm the autistic one. You can't be. It's all about me. And then that sort of, dad thing comes in, and I often do feel, and I will be very honest here, and I might have to edit this one out. I do often feel like it's Sylvia and she has 3 kids. And it is something that we joke about a lot, that Sylvia is the parent and she has 3 kids. And I actually think that a lot of the times it's very, very true. And there is this idea that a lot of men are very immature anyway, and then you add being neurodivergent onto that, and then you add being traumatized in childhood. So I have this thing called Peter Pan syndrome, which has been confirmed that it's not just about being neurodivergent that I don't grow up. And I never actually got to live as a child, because when I was a kid, I often had to be the grown-up. I often had to be the grown-up because of my neurodivergent parents were acting very, very childlike. So I was always told, you're so grown up, you're so grown up, you're so grown up. And then obviously I left home when I was 17. I had to grow up fast. Like I was an adult in my teenage years because I had to be. And 18, you know, I was getting married. At 19, I'm a dad. Like I want to just be a big kid now because I didn't get to be a kid because a lot of the times, you know, I'd be very childish in school. Like I'd take like cuddly toys and things to school, and I was told, oh, you have to grow up, you have to grow up, you have to grow up. So I masked so much of the child that I really wanted to be. And I was always told, oh, you have to grow up, you have to grow up. So I tried to be a grown up. I tried to mask as a grown up so often that I missed out on being a neurodivergent kid. So now and Sylvia allows me to, and my kids allow me to. They're kind of just like, well, that's just dad. He's just like that. I'm a big kid and I love it. I love it. I love it. I do it at work. I do it at home. I'm so unmasked. It's crazy. Like I'm just a big kid. But there are so many reasons behind that other than just being neurodivergent, because I think I take it to a new level a lot of the time. My question to you, Sophie, is how did you realize that you were also autistic? Because you are so switched on, and I really, really want to know, because you realized it before I did.
I think at the time we understood why you were, you know, I had so many special interests and obsessions of my own, and I struggled so much because I think we realised like at the end of year 7 to year 8 that you were, and then like everything, you know, that year 7 was the year that I really realised how different I was to other kids. Like I always thought maybe I was, but because primary school was so normal in my brain and fine, it just was what it was. I didn't feel like I'd stuck out or anything. But going into year 7, feeling like I didn't belong anywhere, finding it really, really difficult, you know, just being so irritated and easily frustrated by everything and what everyone was doing and why everyone was acting the way they were and, you know, doing the things that they were, and I could not get on the same level as everyone. You know, everyone had got Snapchat, everyone had got Instagram. I was like, what are these things? What am I supposed to be posting? And everyone was just so switched on. And also just like my mental maturity, although it seemed like emotionally, or I don't know what the word is, there was a lot of ways I was a lot more mature with everyone, just like how to act and what's right and what's wrong and how you should be towards other, you know, teachers and what you should be doing. There were so many ways that I was so much less mature than everyone else. And I was in year 7 and I still wanted to buy unicorn cuddly toys. And I remember going to a party with all these girls and my tutor, all these fairly popular girls and my tutor. They invited me and I got Mama to curl my hair. So the curls in my hair were like this thin, like they were these crazy, crazy curls. We put loads of them in my hair, and I wore this like sparkly tutu top and this sparkly tutu in this top because I'm thinking, oh, this is a party. Like everyone's like trying, you know, and everyone showed up to Nando's in jeans, in like tight jeans and a top, and I was like in a tight jeans and a crop top, and I was like, oh, I really missed the cue on this one. And I just looked so weird. And then, you know, it felt like everyone was like, why are you wearing that? You know, because I still felt like a kid and everyone just knew somehow what the dress code was or what the thing was. And then we went back to her house and we were all doing karaoke. And I remember, oh, I love karaoke. I can sing, I can do this. And I was doing it. And it almost felt like they weren't happy with me doing it. And everyone else was like really shy. And it almost felt like I was like showing off or going over the top. And I always just felt like too much. So it was either that when I was expressing myself, I was too much, so then I would just not express myself at all, and I was a shell of myself. And I just felt so odd all the time to everyone else. And also, I didn't know how connected this is to being neurodivergent, but I developed so quickly. I was taller than all the other girls. I hit puberty in like year 5, where everyone in year 6 was just like still looked like a baby. And I literally had like acne and spots in year 5 and year 6. I just grew so quickly so I felt like I looked out of place because I looked older than everyone else, but my brain was still in the place of let's play, let's go outside and play, and but everyone was already thinking about boyfriends and who's popular and who's not, and which girl is hot and which guy is hot, and I was just like, oh, well, I'm really, really not there. And
I'm sorry. I'm so glad you said that, because like I definitely have been sitting in this episode going, oh my God, I did so many things wrong. And I definitely think that I did so many things right. And I think with me, I tried and I cared. And I think that for a lot of people, they don't, especially dads, they don't seem to try or care enough. I don't mean all, by the way. There's a big difference from my observations. And the things that I got wrong, I felt were out of my control. And as soon as I was diagnosed, and I felt like they were in my control because I had the answers and I understood more about myself, I definitely started correcting a lot of the things that I was doing wrong, because I realized why they were happening. And as soon as you realize why something's happening, then you can start working on it. And there's therapy is great. Certain therapies work, certain therapies didn't, because at the end of the day, if I didn't care, I'd never have gone to therapy. I'd never have tried. I went to therapy because I cared. I didn't want to be like the way I was being in those really bad moments. But as soon as someone said, oh, it's because you're autistic and you're having meltdowns, I was like, oh my God, what? It was like, oh, there were the answers. So I was like, okay, why do I have a meltdown? It's why I'm a neurodivergent specialist, because I deep dived into neurodivergence, into autism, into ADHD, into dyslexia, because I wanted to know how best to be a neurodivergent person and have less deficits that were essentially harmful, not only to me, but to the other people around me, because I cared so much. So I became the best version of myself, not because I got rid of neurodivergent behaviors. I didn't take that part of me away. It's because I was able to understand the things that I was doing because I was neurodivergent that were negatively impacting me and others. And I actively try and help myself, and others actively try and help me with those issues. And then it took me a while, but I was always trying to. But essentially, what I did do was right. And I think this always just came naturally to me because of our neurodivergent connection and my understanding of, that we are, you and I are very similar, even though we're very different to everyone else. We're very similar. I understood you on a level that no one else understood you. To this day, I don't think anyone understands anyone in this family like you and I understand each other. The thing that I understood the most was you wanting to just be a kid. And I never, ever forced you to grow up. I never did that really toxic thing that a lot of men do to young girls of like, you're a lady. You shouldn't be saying this, and you should be acting like this, or you should dress like this because you're a girl. I never did that. I never went, oh, because you're a girl, you should act this way, or because you're a girl, you shouldn't do this.
No, the one thing that always felt great is although I felt different all the time, at home you were always telling me being different is good, being weird is good, be different. And that's why, like, unless I was silent most of the time, I couldn't really mask amazingly. I could try and copy what everyone was wearing and just try. I was there enough to the point where it wasn't like I really couldn't understand anything and like it was really obvious. But I always felt like it was okay to be different and weird, and just no one else was getting it, which is why I think I built such an annoyance and frustration to most people, because I'm just like, well, you're just sad because you're not weird and you're just boring. And so it was like, But I remember realizing the reason why we realized that I was autistic is because I was like, okay, because I knew how weird I was, and I also had really difficult time managing friendships. And I always did during primary school, but I thought that was just normal because kids have a lot of drama. But I just always had challenges with friendships of always wanting to be getting a bit weirdly obsessed. Like my friend would become my special interest of like, I want to know everything about them. I want to do everything with them. I want to be with them all the time. Like they would be like, I would just become really interested in them. And then they would go because they wanted other friends or they matured more than I was. And I would get really upset because I'd always felt left behind, and I just was never on the same level at some point with them.
I don't think it helped much because I got hurt so many times, especially with friendships. And I think that if I had the friendships that I have now with the neurodivergent people that I have now, my parenting style for friendships would have been very, very different. You would have been brought up very different with the idea of friendships. But my experience of friendships to that point, when I was, you were in such a developmental stage where you were just, I essentially was shaping you with my words. I really thought all friends are just awful. Who wants a friend? They're just a waste of time. They're just going to hurt you. And your mum still feels like that. So your mum would say it, you can't trust people. You can't trust people. You, Simon, my absolute best friend who I love to bits, Sylvia is like, I need to meet him. Like, I need to meet him before I can truly trust Simon. I'm like, yeah, but I trust Simon 100%. She's like, yeah, but I need to meet him. I need to know him.
Oh, yeah. Caris and my mum were like, make sure he's real, Si.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm not real. I'm in the Matrix.
Hey, I got real good.
I'm in the Matrix, man. I remember when I first met you, you were like, you're real.
I think you guys had a very negative view of people, of friendship.
We were treated very, very poorly throughout our entire childhood, both of us. Your mum more often worse than I was, and I had a bloody bad time. But your mum was also treated badly, but she just never really talked about it. But that's how she felt. So your issue with friendship was far more on me. But I would continually try and have friendships where I think your mum would just be like, yeah, I can't be bothered. Or your mum would make a friend, but that friend wouldn't like me. So that friend would just disappear, or mummy would get rid of them because you're like, well, you don't like, well, because to be fair, not a lot of people did like me because I was and still can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, I would create very, very high standards of friendship, of how you needed to be a good friend and everything that you needed to do. And I would follow it.
Exactly the same as me.
Exactly. And it would be very, very intense for them. And looking back, I'm like, yeah, no wonder they don't. I was like, it was very intense how much just like, I want to know everything about them and hang out with them all the time. And I just want to be best friends forever. And especially for me, my understanding of friendship again was all learnt off of TV. And TV, how they play out friendships, like I would like at that time, especially I would like religiously watch Friends, is you would do anything for them and you sacrifice things for them, and friendship is this and friendship is that, and these are the rules of friendship that I would follow based off of TV shows and Adventure Time with Jake and Finn, and how it's like family. I'd see friendship as an extension of family and you apply the same rules, but that's just not true. What I had to do is when I got older, I really had to start lowering my expectations, these standards, to actually be able to have friends. Otherwise, I just get into arguments with them. I did that for you. Why would you not do that for me? And just like and kind of wash out these standards that I created of completely unrealistic ones, like ones off of TV and childhood shows where they did, on Disney Channel, where these two people were their best friends, so they knew everything about each other and didn't care about anyone else and would do but that's not true. And that's not how friendships work. But I took it so literally. But I remember realizing I was autistic is knowing, okay, well, I'm really weird. And so is Daddy, and he's being diagnosed with this. So I remember what we did is I just went onto Google and I went autism in girls. And although it might be wrong and still very stereotypical, but at the time, not knowing anything about it, I can Google it now, and what it comes up with is hides the signs of autism by copying how other children behave, withdraw it in situations they find difficult, appear to cope better with social situations, and show fewer signs of repetitive behaviours, and then apply that to all the ones about boys. I was like, oh my God, that's me. The level of anxiety I had in social situations, especially in school, was just like unnatural. It just didn't even seem like okay. And I was like, and then me just constantly watching how other people did things and not understanding how they just got it and I couldn't. And then when someone didn't do something that I wanted them to do, or it didn't go in the way that I wanted it to go, I would just go to the extreme about it. I would get upset and annoyed and cry, and I was always very, very emotional. I've always been very emotional and easily frustrated, just not to the same level as Daddy.
So what you're saying is I'm more emotional than a teenage girl. That is a very good way of summarizing me as a human. I am more emotional than a teenage girl going through puberty.
But it also applied to me when I was a child, just being easily frustrated if things didn't go my way. Like when Mama took me shopping to the mall, she wanted to look at clothes for her, and I wanted to look at clothes for me, and I just couldn't understand why we were looking at clothes for her, and I just had this huge meltdown.
Oh,
but
you and your mum.
I wouldn't
Jesus.
really have meltdowns in front of you. I would only have meltdowns around Mama or everyone else, because I was worried about you having a meltdown and how you would react to me. So most of the time, if I was having my meltdown in front of you, it would just come in the form of me crying. It would just be me crying.
Yeah, I think a lot of becoming a neurodivergent specialist was being a parent to two very, very different neurodivergent kids. Simon and you could not be more different. And Simon is like a little mini mummy, and I'm a mini, and you're a mini me. And it was fascinating from like almost like a scientific perspective of the way that I would like see your behaviors and I see Simon's behaviors, and both of you being equally as autistic, equally ADHD, but the way that you would react to certain things and your differences was fascinating to me. And I like I said, I looked at it almost like in a weirdly clinical way.
The key difference between me and Simon is, again, apart from when I was at school. If I was at school, I was very introverted because I was very nervous and shy all the time, and I was scared all the time. But if I was just being me and I was having my moments or my thing, Simon is very internal and I'm very external. I'd come home and I'd complain and I'd get frustrated, and you could see that I'm getting annoyed, and you can see I'm impatient, and you could see that I'm burning up and I've got tears in my eyes and I'm getting upset or I've been offended. With Simon, you can't see it. Can't see it at all.
Yeah, I think how you are so much like me, and I think a lot of this is nurture and nature. But like I said, Simon's not like this. Is the eggshells thing. So we joke that like sometimes talking to Sophie is like playing Jenga. You never quite know the one thing you're going to say that's going to be like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. And that's really, and Sophie and I, we're so good now. We were good in the past, but we definitely went through a period where we were just clashing a lot, especially when you were a teenager. We would clash a lot, you and I, because I would just you got sick of me just saying whatever was on my mind, because a lot of the times you didn't want to hear it. A lot of the times all you wanted to hear was, I love you, sweetheart, whatever, because you just wanted someone to be comforting.
A lot also what you do, which is part of your neurodivergence, is you just repeat what you say.
Oh God, all the time, like a broken record.
All the time, and it just comes to a point where you're like, I cannot hear this sentence for the it feels like it's the 200th time that you're telling me something, and I'm like, I just can't hear about this anymore. And when you become obsessed with something, you just keep repeating it all the time, and you're just like, I just come to a point where I'm like, I can't anymore. As much as you can see things as generational trauma, or see things, the behaviors that you have because of things that have happened or whatever, I always find it interesting the exact behaviors I have from you, but I haven't gone through the rage and the anger, the bullying that you have, and I always think, when we're talking about neurodivergence, I see it so chemically, I see it so scientifically, I see it as the fact that every day in the morning I take 27 milligrams of methylphenidate, and this voice inside me that usually if someone says something I don't like, or something changes in the day, or there's a plan, before I'm annoyed and I'm angry and I can't cope and the day's ruined and I'm sitting there and I'm struggling and I'm like, I'm trying to chill myself out and I'm trying to take deep breaths and I'm like, and it's just like, it's so prominent. And then I take that pill and I'm like, oh, okay.
It's that. I will definitely say that I'm, like many neurodivergent people diagnosed ADHD. I also, I'm on methylphenidate. I take a lower dose actually than Sophie. Like I said, heavy drug user. Unfortunately, heavy drug user. I take 18. Sometimes I need 2, so it's 36 during the day. Sometimes it's more. But it has really helped me with my meltdowns because it gets rid of the noise, and it was actually Sophie being diagnosed ADHD and getting the medication. We saw such a huge difference in her and her ability to deal with situations where normally she'd just have an absolute meltdown in a lot of situations. She just wasn't. So I would say the biggest in the early stages for me, I needed the discovery, the diagnosis, because I didn't know enough about it. So I needed someone to confirm it for me. Once I did have a really good working knowledge of it and I understood it about my kids, it was a lot less important to get a diagnosis for their own personal journey and more important for like getting support and needs. But it was important for Sylvia to have that piece of paper, because in a very stereotypically autistic way, but she can't say it. She knows she knows it. She can't say it unless she has the piece of paper. That is just how our brain works, which, essentially it was enough for me to know that she was neurodivergent anyway. But Sophie, it's been an absolute pleasure. We're definitely going to have to do this again in a weird way. Simon, I'm quite glad you're sick. So,
oh yeah, great. Cheers.
Yeah, you're welcome. I hope you're sick more often.
Oh yeah, great. No, I just want to say, Sophie, I really appreciate you stepping in for me this week. I wouldn't have been able to have spoken as eloquently and as long as you have today. Well, everyone that's been listening to this and not my cold, thank you so much for joining us. If you found inspiration, knowledge, or simply a moment of reassurance of the conversation that Sophie and Jordan had today, then we're really proud and pleased that you found it. If you enjoyed what you've heard, please consider subscribing to hear more from us. And please rate and leave a review. It does really, really help. So, as always, Jordan, say goodbye to Sophie for a few moments, I guess. You're in the same house.
Bye to Sophie. I'll see you. I'm hungry. You hungry? I'm hungry.